Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. Pitch analysis here of Ty. We're going to pair him up with Bob Wheatley. So Bob Wheatley's about 6'3", 225, so bigger athlete. So when you're comparing yourself to a bigger athlete, you have to make sure that you're moving faster or through more range of motion. Basically, you got to get an advantage somewhere else. So coming out of leg lift and just before leg drive, we can see Bob's getting in a more linear position with the force vector, that ankle to knees, carrying his hips longer, more forward and down at the same rate. So you can see 5 degrees more linear, and that's important because the more linear the shin angle is when it goes to create, or when it can create force, it's going to create more linear power in the stride. If it's too vertical, we're going to not want to push or drive, so we want to just rotate, and then we're just using a lot of our momentum as it shifts. You can see as Bob goes the front foot, you can see a lot of drive, extension of the ankle, knee, and hip flexor, triple extension. And Ty, you can see your knees just kind of turning over, and you are extending your ankle, but a little bit more rotation, and that's why we see these shorter stride lengths than Bob, long stride lengths. So Bob potentially is going to get closer to the hitter. That's going to be a big deal for perceived velocity. Also, there's going to be a lot more energy here coming in the front foot. Arm cocking is late, which is good on both. The elbow positions are lower here, mainly because you're not moving as fast. Typically, when you're moving faster down the mountain, centrifugal force will help keep the limbs up, but similar orientation in the trunk. As you go into shoulder rotation, external rotation, we can measure the trunk orientation and see what the difference is at maximum external rotation. Let's see, oh no, similar place, okay. I'd say Bob's maybe a little bit more forward, a little bit more energy going forward, which would be a product of both having closed shoulder orientations, but Bob having a longer stride, more power. And then most importantly, at pitch release, we're going to see that energy probably carried farther. And why is that? If we go back, we can see here in that maximum external rotated position, Bob has a more flexed front leg position because of the longer stride. When you have more momentum in a more flexed front leg position, it supports a more dynamic trunk, meaning that trunk can really push out into release, and we can see both pitchers very close to the same ball release position. But we look at the trunk orientation in that position, and we can see, considerably more forward trunk tilts for Bob, which potentially is going to be more velocity because this is the biggest predictor of velocity. That's what we said. If we have a bigger pitcher, which we can see with Bob, generating more stride distance, more momentum, a more flexed front leg, and then a more dynamic trunk, we're going to have more velocity. So that's what we need to do. We need to work on getting bigger, stronger, faster. We need to work on covering more ground with the stride, getting more dynamic, more of that energy into the trunk. I think the limiting factor for you is, hip mobility. You got some really tight hips, so you need to address your hip mobility issues. You need to get, stronger in your lower half, so you can not only mobilize but stabilize these more full range positions. You can get more power through the stride in those positions, and then your trunk can transfer all that energy as we see Bob doing here. You address those things, and like I said, you're going to see a good amount of increase in your velocity.